Hello, Steve White, Trekway89 for Steve Arts 89. Well, it's the 45th anniversary of Star Trek The Motion Picture, the best Star Trek motion picture, and aside from Star Trek For the Voyage Home, the only Star Trek motion picture. Now, I love this film because, although a lot of people criticise it for being slow, the reality is it really took time to immerse you in the 21st century and the wonder of space and the beauty of space and the vastness of space and just the wonder and contemplation of what all that meant and what was happening at the end to Aliyah and Decca. And it was just a beautiful science fiction film and a great experience. Something that has not been matched by any of the other films. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't there to see it in the theatres in 1979. So I've done my best to recreate that experience with things like, you know, the programs and stuff like that, with the beautiful photography and merchandise like, you know, the poster books and, you know, articles in Cinefex and stuff like that, you know, so I can catch up on the latest effects work and 1979. And of course I can read my comic adaptation, which of course has scenes which aren't in the actual film. And the best version of that, though, is the Grand Dreams hardcover. It has the most beautiful printing of the art. So if you ever want a version of this, don't bother with the... they actually did a re-release of this, but the digital remastering is primitive, to say the least. But I even missed the video release of it on VHS, the theatrical version in 1980. And my first memory really of Star Trek The Motion Picture is seeing it on TV when I was a little kid and being mesmerised by the shots of Vulcan, the moons, and Earth, Starfleet, and the visuals of the film. I remember that. I don't know when I saw that. Later I saw the other films on TV, and then a friend's father who was into sci-fi lent me his videos where he'd taped Star Trek 2, 3 and 4 on video. So I watched them. I almost didn't give them back. I borrowed it for so long. But then I had to go out and buy the extended version of Star Trek The Motion Picture so I could watch Star Trek The Motion Picture because I hadn't really seen it. So that made it difficult because I got used to the extended version. So then when I later got a widescreen version, not only was it letterbox, so you got the whole picture, but it also was like this. And there were scenes missing, or it felt like there were scenes missing, like it had been edited because I was used to the extended version. And of course there is that airlock shot, which I didn't really realise. I never really noticed that you can see the edges of the set. I just thought that was somehow the back behind the airlock, like the you know, whatever. But someone pointed that out to me, like, oh yeah. So there were some issues. There really was no good way to watch the film. Because the extended version had that shot that was added in without the finished effects shot, and it was full screen. So, but then eventually, we were fortunate enough to get the director's edition of Star Trek The Motion Picture, but there were issues. Now, I went out and bought this from Minotaur, and then afterwards I went to JB Hi-Fi and bought a DVD player to actually watch it, because it was my first DVD. And that was almost my first video. I think my first video was In Bed with Madonna. If I didn't get it given to me at Christmas, I bought it. And my second video was Star Trek The Motion Picture, the extended version. This is my first DVD, and I was invested in video and didn't really want to start buying DVDs, but this started me off. There are some great elements about it, the picture quality and everything, but there also were some bad elements. They did an awful job of the Starfleet scenes. They went out, I hear, with a digital camera and photographed the bay and then photoshopped in that's why they didn't get the same dynamic views and angles, because they were actually using a person on the ground taking photos and then photoshopping, and the quality even in 2001 looked awful. So watching it on DVD on a better on a proper screen, because watching it on a TV screen helped a little bit in widescreen because it was so small, but then seeing it on a proper screen, widescreen, looked awful. And I don't know how they did that bad. And really what I think it came down to was they just wanted their version. They didn't want to recreate the original artist's intent or the original scene we were used to, because they had that shot of the Federation logo on the ground because they just didn't have time to finish the other shots. I think there were 3 shots of Starfleet. There was the shot of the shuttle approaching, and then a shot of the city looking up at the shuttle going across, and then a shot of the shuttle actually going into the bay. And apparently they found those shots, or the matte plates and everything, but they didn't finish them. They could have finished them or recreated them in digital, but they didn't, because I think they just wanted to keep their version of Starfleet so they can see that's my contribution to the film. It was all about them. You can tell I don't like these guys, and I don't. But they also butchered the scenes of Vija. They left the Enterprise scene intact, but they butchered some of the flyover scenes of Vija, which meant defiling Jerry Goldsmith's soundtrack by editing it and trimming it. So there are a few issues, and some of the changes they made, like cutting out Alia's line about Vija doesn't know, were not actually Robert Wise's decisions, that they had some influence and pressured him to do a few things that didn't really work for the film. That's implied by Robert Wise and a few other people. I wasn't there. But I don't like the guys who are involved in the director's edition at the end of the day. And that's not just because I believe they got me kicked out of the Star Trek The Motion Picture Facebook fan groups, because I criticised them for emphasising using a technology that was being sponsored by Paramount, and they might have been actually sponsored by, or they may have invested in the release and promotion to promote the actual technology, because they were showing pictures and that looked woeful, the colours looked off, and I thought they were compromising the integrity of the film and the vision to pander to sponsors, and but on one level to get the film done, I guess. But so I was mysteriously removed from all the Facebook groups and all the other groups that they were involved in, and I believe that I've been told they did it, but I can't prove that, so I can't say that. So allegedly, supposedly, they got me kicked out, which was painful. I love Star Trek The Motion Picture, and I loved going to those groups and talking to other fans and seeing all the news and all that, and I was part of the whole petitions to get it done in the first place. So being removed from that was painful, and I'm still bitter about it. That's why I hate these guys. And then when I finally saw the 4K Director's Edition, it was interesting because I wasn't able to stream it onto my TV. I actually watched it on Disney Plus. Not Disney Plus, Paramount Plus when it first came out. Free trial, didn't pay them. They have got none of my money, ever. But yeah, some parts look beautiful and it's good, but other parts, like they butchered the lounge scene with the officer's lounge scene with McCoy. He looks like a paper cutout in front of like CGI. It's just woeful. They should have left it as it was. The original design was supposed to be more close to that, where there was the officer's lounge that they show in miniature further down, but they didn't have a full set for that. They made another set. Originally, it was just supposed to be space. Then for the director's edition, they put the nacelle in, but then they said it wasn't the right position, so they said they were screens. Either way, they managed to make it work. But this version, they didn't have a good enough shot of McCoy walking around in front of the cast in front of the screens to do it properly. So they should have either invested a lot of money in recreating and fixing that, or they should have just left it alone. They did it anyway. It looks awful. And Starfleet, of course, instead of restoring those shots that originally were planned, recreating them, they kept their own sort of design, and it really looks out of place for the rest of the film. It doesn't fit the rest of the shots. The camera lens, the angles, the everything is just wrong. But I guess they get to watch it and go, that's my part. Okay. So I love Star Trek The Motion Picture because it really was the only film to really let us just absorb, the space and just immerse ourselves in it. And a lot of people say it's slow. I say those people just don't love Star Trek. And it was the only, other than The Voyage Home, because The Voyage Home was a bit of a compromise. They had a science fiction story, but they also had the fish out of water contemporary story for the general normies. But they kept an actual Star Trek story intact. So it is a good film. Star Trek The Motion Picture is pure Star Trek, pure science fiction story. And I'd rather be in the 21st century the whole time, whereas we only get bookended with that film. So I think it's the best film, it's my favourite film, and more people saw that than the JJ film, although it made a tiny little bit more. If you add for inflation, they're around the same. There's a couple of $1 million difference, and slowly Motion Picture's creeping up more with inflation than JJ's film. So eventually, with inflation, Star Trek Motion Picture will have made more money, and also is more profitable, because even though they tacked on all the Phase 2 prices and costs and all that for the other TV films that were never made, the film still costs less. So it'll eventually make more money. But I think when you work out, more people actually attended Star Trek The Motion Picture than the JJ film. So it's the best Star Trek film no matter what you say. Best quality, best story, had, I think, in some ways the most impact because it was the first one. Now, Wrath of Khan is an issue because Wrath of Khan, they sat someone down who didn't know Star Trek to watch it, and he just pulled out the most normie things that people would like about Star Trek, and they compromised and they made a really generic action film, which was the Wrath of Khan. And there's no science fiction story to it, there's no Star Trek to it, it's just what would then become like the villain of the week for the films, where every film there's some villain after revenge trying to recreate Khan, because they think that's what the normies think Star Trek is, goodies and baddies in space. And they think science fiction is just, well, it's in the future and there's spaceships and ray guns, so it's science fiction. So that's unfortunately the decline that happened with Star Trek, the Wrath of Khan, or the Revenge of Khan as it would have been. And yeah, so as much as I love the films, looking back at Star Trek as a whole franchise, they are the most disappointing part, because you can see Star Trek as the things that tried to be Star Trek and keep faithful to Star Trek, and the things that tried to appeal to the masses. And I'm talking about real Star Trek, original canon Star Trek. I'm not even talking about the Discovery JJ Prime universe and how all of those, I'm just talking about even the original Star Trek started to compromise with Wrath of Khan. Then Gene came back with Next Generation, restored everything, but then he got sick, and then they slowly regressed it back into Wrath of Khan, and we eventually got Deep Space Nine at war and religion and terrorism and conflicts and all this stuff that wasn't part of Gene's vision. So I'm glad we have the Cage and the motion picture, which are sort of the purest expressions of Gene's vision of Star Trek. And of course, the first couple of years of Next Gen, but it's hard to separate them from the rest of the show where they started to compromise. But I love the film. I love celebrating it. I love watching it. I love dwelling in it. And the only other thing I meant to show was just also the beautiful Art of Star Trek, the motion picture book that came out a couple of years ago. And we're still going to get more merchandise because it's good and it sells. So hopefully I'll get to do other videos promoting Star Trek stuff, because I did a little video about this. There was some extra stuff in it. The packaging was good. There were issues with the film, of course, because they did do a branching version of the extended version on their HD version disc of the motion picture, because they have the regular theatrical version and the branching extended version, but they didn't copy that for Blu-ray. They did just a regular version of the film, like a regular version of the original Blu-ray that was released, instead of updating us and giving us the new Blu-ray version of the theatrical film and the branching extended. And the only real issue with that, because frankly I have more nostalgia for the original version, which has been preserved. You can find it online, and it exists on DVD and that, in for free, the original extended version and everything. I have more nostalgia for that, but I do want to see the finished matte painting of the airlock and that scene. But I'm not buying a 4K player just to watch that one scene in the extended version, so I don't know when I'm ever going to see it. But I'm going to go. I talked for way longer than I planned, but I love Star Trek the Motion Picture, so it's hard not to talk about it. And if you love Star Trek the Motion Picture too, and you share my love for it, you're probably still watching this, so it doesn't matter. So I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. This is not my first attempt at this video, and I'm wondering, did I mention that they did the theatrical version? They released it on Blu-ray because they couldn't do the director's edition and they wanted to do like all the films in Blu-ray, because sometimes when you do multiple videos, do you think, did I just say that, or did I say that in the last video? But it also had some nice art, some original art, and some original special features, because did I also mention, which I feel like I did in the other video, I was disappointed with this release because although it had new retrospective documentaries of cast and crew, they were featurettes and they were only like 10 minutes long. I was expecting them to be like full 45-minute documentaries. I was like, wow, I get the film in like a couple of hours of documentaries, and then I'm like, oh, they're like 10 minutes long. Okay. And this had a couple little special features as well. It had the longest trek, which was about writing the motion picture, a reunion of some of the cast, some of the crew, and commentary as well by Michael and Dennis Carter, who we love. Even though they're not perfect, we still love them because they are okay. I wish I was them. I wish I could have I wish I could have been in, like, Denise was in the actual recreation room scene. She was one of the Enterprise crew of the motion picture refit Enterprise. envy her and will forever. And of course, they worked on Star Trek 6. Sorry, Star Trek 4. They began in the Next Generation and Star Trek 6 and all that. So yeah, I envy them. I love them. But they did make a couple of mistakes on the remastered TV series. They didn't remove, they didn't fix the T from the R on the gravestone, and they could have shown the Enterprise go to warp a couple of times. They held back a couple of things for their own personal reasons, which I think compromised a couple of scenes and a couple of episodes. But aside from that little mistake on that one project, I love them, and I love the motion picture. And I have to stop talking because I'm over 15 minutes. Yeah, I'm glad it's still here. I'm glad we've recently had this new edition, and there probably will be more versions and more merchandise and stuff that's going to come out, because it's just a classic and it's epic and it holds up and I love it, and you know, there is no comparison.